Hey, good morning. Here we go. It's Saturday again. Out here semi-bright and early. It's about 8, I think. Got a fire going. I'll be ditching this dorky hat here in a minute. But time to get back after it. Where I left off, we had mocked everything up late last night. Got all the ladder bars measured and in place, and everything seems to be fitting as it should. Got the panhard bar in. It will be able to sit horizontal to the ground as we need it to. Got my perches mounted or mocked up for the shocks, coilover shocks. And for anyone who's asking or wondering, I'm running my panhard bar behind my rear end, so it kind of eats up all my area to run any shocks and or springs there. I could run a short panhard bar right here on the front, but I don't think I'll be happy with the performance. I think it'll bind up in the suspension, and that's my bind up look right there. So instead, I think I've decided that I can fit and run my shocks right here behind or on the outside of the frame, and they'll still they'll still look okay. They're gonna live. I thought about running them in between the under the frame, kind of like that, but obviously when they compress, it's not gonna work. The frame's gonna hit the spring and the shock. So I think I'm gonna run them just like this, basically, and I'm gonna have them at a 10 to 15 degree angle. But again, good morning, Saturday. I'm gonna let this fire heat me up just a little bit, and then put you up on the shelf, crank some tunes. I'm gonna pull it all apart. All right, guys. Sorry for the swinging camera there, but I figured this was the best angle to look at what we have going on here. So everything's just mocked up with magnets right now, kind of to make sure it's all gonna work together. And so here's what we have. We have panhard bar. And here's the basics of a panhard bar. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can do this. Now we'll talk about that in a minute. Panhard bar is mocked up. I have multiple positions that I could put it in. You know, it's overkill. I guess if down the road I ended up wanting less or more ride height frame relative to rear end, I could just adjust it. But it's a pretty slick little bracket. Again, got that off Speedway. You can get it off Summit and others, I'm sure, too. It rides right behind the rear end. You can see there's just a little bit of gap right here. And then I have a bracket on that side that came with the kit that I'm going to copy, make a second one, so that I'll have 2 brackets. I can bolt it through them. That's going to make it good and rigid on that side over there. That's a 4-inch bracket. As anticipated, it kind of lives right between the third and fourth hole over here. It's a little lower actually than I anticipated. So I think that's going to work. I have my shock mounts set here and on the other side. You can see them kind of in the position I think they're going to live. And as you may recall, we talked about needing 12 inches between, for the shock. And if you look right here, that's 12 inches, boom. It's gonna land right at the middle hole on the bracket, the bottom bracket for mounting purposes. So that's perfect. I can run it up one, I can run it down one if I ever want my rear end to be lower or higher. I'm loving that so far. That's if I mount these flush with the bottom of the frame. And while we're here, let's take our handy dandy little gauge. I'm gonna get and mock up with a piece of cardboard. I think a shock, it's gonna look cheesy, but I'm gonna put it on here and get a good look at the rear end, see how it's all gonna play. Now, where this is really gonna mess things up is my bed goes right around this frame. Okay, I mean it's like an inch on each side. And these little brackets are about 2 inches, I'm guessing. Yeah, 2, about 2 1/4. So my frame's gonna hit right here when I go to put it on. So I'm gonna have to notch out the frame in order to get it, and I'm gonna have to carve it out anyway because my spring's gonna live right here. So that portion of the bed, I kept saying frame, I think that portion of the bed, I'm just gonna have to cut a slot right here so that my spring can live where it needs to live relative to the rest of this. So let's flip over here real quick and get a general angle, because I wanted it to live, I was thinking like 30, 40 degrees, because I thought I might run it in here. But hello, if I run a shock from here to here, when the bed compresses, it's going to compress on top of the shock. I don't know what I was thinking there. So it has to be outside fully or inside pretty much fully. And I don't think that's going to work, obviously, because of where my panhard bar is on both sides. It's eating up everything behind the rear end inside the frame. On the front side of the frame, I could get a panhard bar that runs from this frame rail and make them where it runs to the front of the third member there and bolts on. I don't love that because I'd have a panhard bar that's about that long. And here in a minute, I'm going to explain why that's a bad idea. So my shock is going to run at about this angle, okay? Which is making it hard for me to read. So let's do it this way. Okay, so right there is 20 degrees. And with my calibrated eyeball, and right there is 10 degrees. With my calibrated eyeball, it's going to sit about 15 degrees. But I'm going to mock it up, maybe even stick a bolt in it, and then I'll do some math. The old 3, 4, 5, right? I can measure, well, I can measure this top hole is 10 inches, I believe. So it's going to be 6, 8, 10, 3, 4, 5 is 6, 8, 10. So if I'm 10 inches to the top hole, again, calibrated eyeball, I'm going to be about 2 inches over the old Pythagorean theorem, the little cosatoa, SOHCAHTOA, cosine, sine. I don't know. Uncle Bern, you could weigh in on this one and tell me how to do that. But I'm confident I can calculate the angle of that triangle, that bottom angle of that triangle, if I wanted to sit down and do some math. Instead, I'm going to put a string on it, and I'm going to take my little angle finder right here, stick it on there, and it's going to tell me what the angle is. So let me do that real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, guys. So super low tech, kind of. I simply got my chalk line. I ran it, secured the bracket a little better right here, and I ran it over the outer edge of the mounting point for the top of my shock. And I got down here and adjusted this line so that it hits right on the outside of the lower mount of the shock. Okay. And it looks really good to me. So once again, I'm going to go back to my my deal here. Just get it lined up so it's touching. That's telling me 172. Let's do it this way. Okay, that is showing me nine degrees. So that's 9 degrees angle right there. Okay. I kind of want it at 10, which would be right there. Now, like I discussed before, I'm going to take these old perches off of here in a minute. That'll probably eat up the rest of my evening, but take those off. I can scoot that mount out, but I don't want to come out too much because I don't want interfering more and more and more with the bed. And I'll walk you over there in a second and show you why. But so I think I'm gonna shoot for 10 inches or 10 degrees. Okay, which is gonna be about right there, which will put this mount out just a little bit further. I'll do the same on that side, and 10 degrees. And then what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to end up having to get different coilover shocks I'll put on there that are in like the 140 rating range, 140 pounds per inch. But you can see how that what my plan is there. I don't think it'll look too bad, especially given my panhard bar there. So let's walk you over here. Again, you can see how I have that panhard bar mocked up. Goes right behind the rear end, right there. Okay, and then my shocks, coilover shocks, are going to go right there, just like that. I think that's going to do the trick. So the reason I don't want to eat up more than I have to right here is because this bed, I'll walk you over here. Okay, so looking at the front of the bed, okay, you can see that's the bed. If you look at the front of it, it has this lip right here. So I have 1 inch of play from inside here to inside the other side. Okay, there's 1 inch outside the frame, and we already established those brackets. I think we said are 2 1/4. Anyway, so I'm gonna have about, or 2.5 maybe. So I'm gonna have about 1.5 inches into the brackets down here where the bracket's gonna lay. Okay, and then from there I'm gonna have to accommodate for the shock. And ideally, it'd be really cool if I just only have to cut out of the bottom of this bed to get it to go around those shocks, where I'm not having to cut up the side of the bed to accommodate for the shock. Does that make sense? I hope so. So ideally, and I'm going to throw tape on it here, I wouldn't want the shocks at 10 degrees to go out the side of this bed, right? I want them to live so that I only have to cut out this portion, which you're never going to see really because it's going to be sat down on there. So it'd be cool if they just came right out the bottom. So I'm going to take a tape and I'm going to measure perch to perch. And I think I established already, this is 47 inches, I believe, from side to side. Hard to do with one hand. Okay, so it's 47 on this top to top, 47.5. So down here where we're talking, the bed side to side is 41. Okay, so I have 41 inches to play with. So if I take and I measure from spring mount to spring mount here, oh man, that is close. Okay, so I'm about, you can see I'm about on the spring over there, spring mount, shock mount rather, whatever, shock mount. And if you look right here to where the other perch is, I don't know if you can see that. It's right at 41 inches. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do some more accurate non-one-handed measuring. And I'm going to figure out exactly how much I have to play with, so I don't have to start going up the side of that bed and cutting into the side of the bed. I just have to cut around the bottom part where the bed comes in like that on the bottom. And that's all I have to do to accommodate. So I'm going to measure it out, even if I have to go to like 8 degrees, which isn't ideal, but I think for a degree or two, I'm going to get it where all I have to do is cut out here to accommodate for my shock and not have to get in the side of the bed, because it'll, I think, look a lot better that way. And I'll still have my shock sitting slightly at an angle, which will help with cornering and all that kind of thing. I don't expect I'm going to be doing any road races in this, but you know, the more the shocks are tilted to a point, the better control I have over the side to side stiffness, cornering, ride, and all that. But I think I'm going with 10 degrees. I'm going to do some actual measurements. Step one, All right, check it out here, guys. I ordered something up to help me make sure everything's square when I go ahead and weld up this rear end. Hopefully it'll work as planned, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But while I'm waiting for the battery to charge on that, I've been doing some math to figure out how I want to mount my shocks. You know, we talked about, I'm going to put the panhard bar inside the rear end right here, or I'm sorry, inside the frame, right behind the rear end. So it's going to eat up all that space where normally I would mount shocks and make them nice and in and tight. I would like that, but I kind of committed to that panhard bar the way that I did. So instead of putting it inside, putting my shocks inside, I'm going to put them outside of the frame. So on my handy dandy calculation sheet here, I went and measured the bed sitting over here, and the bed is 40 inches inside width. Okay, and we'll peek at that in a second. The frame, where the axle is, right here, is 32 inches. It's actually 29 inches. Okay, but I have 1.5 inches on each side right here for my upper shock mount. Okay, so overall we're going to be at 32 inches wide, and I wanted at least 10-degree outward kick on my shocks, my springs, my coilovers. I would like a little more for the look, but I think it's going to look pretty good at about 10. So what I did is, if I have 32 inches is the width between the tops of the shocks, and I have 40 inches to play with at the bottom, I had to figure my shock width, okay? The girth of my shock is 3 inches, so 1.75 inches, or I'm sorry, the girth is 3.5 inches, so 1.75 inches is what I need to calculate off of the center of that shock to accommodate for what I'm going to need to cut out of my bed to make it look right. Okay, so I got the bed here and the shock sitting out like that. So when you do all that math, it comes out where, so I had basically 8 inches to play with. I take back my 1.75 inches for the girth of the shock, which I made it nice and easy. I went with 2 inches. So at 8, take 2. I'm down to 4 inches. I add back my quarter. Right, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Add my 1/4 inch to get my that I earned over here. 2.25 inches. That's what it comes out to. Did you follow that math? Probably not, because it probably made no sense. But the bottom line is, the top of my shock mount being where it's going to be on the frame, I can accommodate 2.25 inches further out for the bottom of the bottom shock mount. So I have those mocked up down here. You can see on each side with magnets, and I'm going to have to get them exactly square and exactly vertical. So I'll do that in a second. But I went ahead and did all the math, and back in my algebra days, Uncle Bernie, thank you very much for teaching me algebra. I could have done the Kosatoa, Sokotoa thingamajigger with 2 sides of a triangle and an angle. You can calculate the rest. So rather than sit down and spend 30 minutes doing the math, because that's what it would take at this point in my life, I went online. And so if I have a 12-inch shock, okay, and I put this into this calculator wrong. Okay, I did it right now. So if I have a 12-inch shock sitting in an angle, that means that the straight vertical line is 11.73, 11.75 basically. And I can kick it out 2.5 inches off of vertical. So I did that. That imputes a 12.025, so 12 degree. So I'm going to have my shocks at 12 degrees. which I think I mentioned in an earlier video, I wanted 10 to 15. I would say that 12 degrees works just right. So they'll be kicked out a little bit. I think it's going to be enough, a couple inches. I think it'll ride okay. I have no idea. But I do know that anything less than 10 degrees is highly frowned upon. Anything more than 40 degrees is very highly frowned upon. They like to live in that 10 to 30 degree range, and I'm going to go 12 degrees because that's what it'll all accommodate. Now, let me bring you down here real quick. I put you there so you could see, what I'm talking about where my perches are, okay, versus where they're going to land on the rear end. And here is the bed. So I measured, and what we're talking about is between this wall and this wall down here at the curve. It's hard for you to see that probably, but it's a bend right here. That's 40 inches comfortably. So I think having all my calculations work on that, being 40, this being 32, blah, 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 zing a zing, I think it's going to result in me only having to cut out this part. I don't know if you can see that. This part of the frame or the bed. So that from the side of the bed, when it's going down the road, you won't see it because it's going to be down here underneath. It'll be cut out like here, if that makes sense. So there's the goal. We'll see if that happens in later videos. I want to put you back on this. All right, so as you can see, I mocked up my top mount for my shocks. Got it where I wanted. I figured out that I wanted at the bottom of this frame rail. Honestly, I can't remember why, but I did figure out I wanted that instead of the top. I think my thought process was, yeah, at the bottom here, it would land with the 12-inch shock. It's going to land right at that center hole. Okay, it's the 12 inches, boom, right on that center hole. So made sense, flush with the bottom of the frame. So I got it in there, and fast forwarding to the second step, you can see I have my laser lined up with the 3 holes in the bracket. I knew I wanted between 2.5 and 3 inches angle, to create the 15 degree angle. At 3 inches, it's 15 degrees. At 2.5, it's like 13.25 or something like that. But that's what I decided I wanted. But I want to stay out of the bed, so I compromised. I went with 2 3/4 inches. So I started by taking this laser. And the first time, you might have seen, I lined it up where it engaged exactly on the back of the hubs here, of the axle. So I knew that it was square with the axle. And then I lined this up. I just went over until that green line. And you saw it took me a while, is bisecting that upper mount, that upper perch post. Exactly. So I knew that on a square with the rear end plane, boom, that gave me a line on the ground down here where I could mark exactly straight down from where that was. So I did that, made a mark on the ground, nice square mark, because this laser gives me a nice square X on the ground right there where that hits. So then I took and I measured with my square 2 3/4 inches. I moved this over. I lined it up on the line at 2 3/4 inches. So it was exactly in line on the ground. Boom, gave me an exact line shooting up on the mount. And I actually set it on the outer edge of this hole because getting exact center is actually kind of difficult to know, but hitting the exact edge is pretty easy with the laser. So I put the exact edge with the laser to exact outer edge with the laser, got it all lined up, tacked them in. I walked over to get my my bottom spacer, my bottom mount, and I'll grab it so that I can show you. And I ordered all this as a kit together. Once again, I've learned the lesson that you have to verify in the description all of the sizes. So my shocks and these lower mounts are a 1/2 inch hole. This is a 1 inch hole, I think. I think that's what I measured it at. Anyway, it doesn't matter to you, but no, it's not. I don't know why I said that. It's 3/4 inch, which, anyway, it wouldn't go in. It won't fit because I was going to mock it up. So I'll mock it up, and then I can throw a laser straight up from the inner edge of this mount, this spacer that accommodates for the shocks on my coilovers. I'm sorry, the springs on my coilovers, right? To mount it to give room for that spring. So I was going to shoot a line straight up, put the inner edge of my upper mount on that line, booyah diggity, weld it all up, mount that in, and everything should work. Rather than having to try a square with a measurement, with an angle, and the laser would give me exactly where to put it. The problem is, this and this are 3/4, this is 1/2, and the shocks are 1/2. So I need to get online and order a pair of these in 1/2 and an upper mount in 1/2. And I'm hoping that the geometry, i.e. the space between the frame and this mount, is exactly the same distance as this one, because otherwise I get to adjust this bottom mount again, or I get to live with the delta and I'll have to measure it and make the other one exactly the same, right? If it's closer to the frame over here, then so be it. I just have 3 inches instead of 2 3/4 set, right? But as of right now, it's 1 inch. It's exactly 1 inch from the inside. And like I said, in most respects, having a laser like this, a laser level, that will run you some squared lines, it saves so much time, and it definitely ensures that things are actually square. You know, this little level is great, but it's hard to get it exact. Squares are great, but that laser, boom, boom, took me a far less time than doing all the calculations, measurements, dropping a plumb bob maybe, all the different things. Just line up laser, boom, boom. So if I had ordered the right parts, we'd be done with this part of the project tonight, in theory. See you guys in a week. Thanks for following along out there in YouTube, social media world. If you give me a follow, that'd be cool. If you're interested in ever seeing this thing done. If not, no big deal. All right, guys, here we are Saturday. We got Rick here helping us out. Actually, he's got his own project going on over there. Got the anvil out, making presents, gifts. Anyway, so back to the saga that is these shock mounts and all twisted. Problem is, these are 5/8, and my shock is 1/2 inch. So I got back on Summit and I ordered up some prefabbed tabs. Again, for interest of time, you saw that I made the one for the panhard bar. Probably took me, honestly, it probably took me about an hour. So this probably saved me at least 2 hours of my time not to have to cut and make 4 of these. So we got 4 of those. I went ahead and cut out you didn't see it, I didn't bore you with it, but I cut out 4 little gussets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount these tabs right here, 2 each. I'll have my shock that goes down like that, and it should work just fine, I believe. Because my shock mount will be this direction, it'll mount down this direction, and then I cut these gussets out just now, just 4. I'm going to do 1 each on the top right here of the bracket. So I'm going to get my world's smallest welding bench out right here, and just simply weld these gussets that I cut out. Boom, just like that. I'll have 1 on each of the tops, and so I'm gonna put you on the 2 old time lapse, weld all 4 of these up, come back over, we'll get some measurements done. I'll probably use my laser. All right, so I got all excited. Things were going so smoothly this morning. I have no idea how I didn't pay attention, and I welded my gusset on the back of the bracket instead of the top of the bracket. So now I get to spend 15 minutes taking this off, cleaning it up, making another gusset, and welding it on the proper side. All right. Back out here at it again. And so here's the dilemma. I have so much junk right here. I'm trying to solve the problem I have with these shocks. So quick recap. The holes in the shocks are 1/2 inch, require a 1/2 inch bolt. The kit that I got with the top mount and the bottom mount are 5/8 bolts. I really like these. They're obviously built specifically to have the proper offset for the coilovers. They would look pretty, they would work well, but they don't fit. So what if I do this, guys? I mean, that ought to work. This goes on the bracket. I'll probably wash her both sides, tighten her down. That looks like it's going to clear. And that will look a lot cleaner. That'll look a lot cleaner. Done. I think all right. So here we go. I brought the shocks over. I used the spacer that I talked about and bolted them onto that this bracket that I had already tacked on here. And they look great. Looks like it's going to work just fine. So, let me get those out of the way for a quick minute here. So I grab my laser level and I line it up exactly with the inside of the holes on the bracket. And I have it exactly lined up, squared up with that bracket on that side of the panhard bar. So I'm going to take and I'm going to make my X on the ground here, right on my green lines. All right. Get my eyeballs to work right. So there's my X. So now I'm going to move this in, keep it in square, and until I hit the inside of the frame. Alright, so now I have it, you can probably see I have it hitting exactly on the inside of the frame. Again, we all know that the frame goes out as it comes back, so I'm lining up on this beam and I'm scoring it with that panhard bar bracket. And I'm going to make my mark on the ground down here. Okay. And I'm going to pull my laser away and take my tape measure. And I'm going to measure the distance from the outside of the frame to the inside of the hole. Okay, and that is measuring to 4¼ inches. Let's triple check that. And I got 4¼ okay? Now, we talked about 1 3/8 inches. Those brackets obviously set off of the frame, so it's going to come in. I think we're going to hit right at our desired 15-degree inward angle on them. I'm going to use my square to make sure my calibrated tape measure eyeball wasn't that far off. And yes, indeed, 4¼ inches. So now I want to take this, I'm going to swing over to this side. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to catch a squared. Oops, I actually hit the wrong button there. Inside or the outside of the frame. Okay. Outside of the frame is right about there, and I'm going to come in until this green line lines up with actually it's the inside of the bracket today. It really doesn't matter. As long as that green line is with the bracket, and I'm squared off over there, I'll know that I got my distance. I'm trying to get my distance correct from my frame to my bracket on my rear end, so that I know how far out I want to tack that bracket on. Then I'm going to come in with my coilover shock and set my top mounting point here. Now here's the irony. I put a lot of time and effort into this panhard bar bracket, and I feel like it looks pretty clean right there. It's mounted flush, it looks good from the back, and I thought my calibrations were where this was going to live forward of that. I'm looking at that other one, and we'll see here in a minute. So back to the task at hand. You can maybe see there's that green line going straight up that bracket. Okay, I just need to go out now to where this line is straight up that one. In. Make myself a good mark on the ground here. 4¼ inches in. Then I'm going to take my level, I'm going to go back, line it up. Again, I'm going to line it up right where I was before. Okay. And I'm going to square that up on my 4¼ mark. Right there. Holy moly, would you look at that. So I just randomly eyeballed where that bracket should be. And I don't know if you can see that. So I'm going to bring you down here because I'm so impressed with my calibrated eyeball today. Look how close we are. It's supposed to be on the inside of these bolt holes. Darn close. So I'm going to scooch this over just a little bit so that laser line is on the inside of those bolt holes. And you can see it's lined up with the bracket. You can kind of look at what I was doing with my line here and my 4¼ inch line there. I'm going to double check that my measurements are accurate. I'll check that side again, check this side again. I'll set my bracket, I'll tack that dude on, and then I can get my shock on there. We might finally have this thing with suspension. I ordered the wheels on Thursday. It's Saturday. I ordered them Thursday night. 14 inches wide, 15-inch wheel. And so I'm pretty excited, hopefully, but it says it's gonna be like 2.5 weeks because they have to get manufactured because they're so wide. But then we'll have wheels, boop, boop, and this thing will be rolling. So all right, I'm gonna put you back up here and I'll put you on the time lapse. That's what I'm gonna do, get that tacked on and we'll go from there. And somebody's gonna ask, why didn't you just measure how far that bracket was in and just measure the same distance in from the on the axle there and just line it up and weld it? And that would work too. But it's way cooler to use lasers. So we're exactly at 90 degrees to the ground, exactly vertical, square. Everything looks right. I'm gonna throw. I know that obviously only took about a minute, but check it out. It's starting to look like a vehicle. Let me cut some tunes for you. All right. So let's do this. Let's take you. Let me take you around the back here real quick. Let's take a quick peek at this thing. I got a lot of junk hanging out there, but let's take a little look at how it's going to look. Not terrible, I don't think. But you can see how I ended up doing those spacers. I think they came out looking pretty okay. Hopefully you can see that all right. We'll take you around to the other side here real quick. You can take a look kind of from right here. See how those spacers worked out. Right there. Out. So here, hopefully you can see this. Here are my two tabs that are going to get welded on right here. So my hope was they'd live right there. And you know what? That's going to be darn close. Man, I think if I, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll grind that one tack down. Yeah, maybe I'll grind those down and lay this in there exactly right and weld it all together. And I think it's going to live right there. It'll be just about, obviously, you know, I'm going to have to compress this shock down. But it's looking like, with my calibrated eyeball, man, that's going to be just perfect. My calibrated eyeball, that's going to live right there, right around that bracket. It's actually going to look like I meant to do it that way. Crazy. I should have thought to do it that way, but I think if I grind these two tacks out, which it's all welded up now, so that's not going to hurt anything, I can lay that right in there, weld it in, like it's all part of one piece, which, again, had I realized that, I would have done it prior to actually welding that on there. But boom, I think it'll live right there. This one will live right here. And that will be one happy, as Bob Ross would say, one happy little shock mount right there. I think we got a happy shock mount. Where this shock lives right here, I'm going to throw a laser beam up there and see exactly where that lands on this bracket. I'm going to get my grinder, I'm going to clean it up, put this bracket on the top, put the other one, I'll do the same for the inside bracket. Boom, right there. Weld them up, do the other side as well, weld those up. My shocks will be on. This will be technically a roller again. And now we're just waiting on those wheels to come in that actually fit these 5-on-5 bolt pattern. So then I think once I get all that tacked up, it's going to be time to pull it all apart, pull the rear end out, and go ahead and weld everything that's tacked on right now. Go ahead and weld, get it where I can get it out here, and get a nice clean bead as best as I can do, which isn't saying much, but take a run at that. And I think I'm going to have to bite the bullet and pull the engine, because I had it in there so that I could tell where the suspension was going to make it ride. Obviously, with the tunnel ram and the carb and everything, it's going to ride a little lower in front, but not enough to make a difference, I don't think. But I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I guess we'll see. But then I'm going to add that out and pull it all apart and bite the bullet, flip it up on its side. I need to make some fish plates, get my frame all done before I start mounting the gas tank and the fuel lines, the battery, which I haven't really figured out where I'm going to mount the battery. A really nice, easy place to put it would be to put it right here, but then it would hang down probably like that. And from the back end, you know, I'm not trying to make this look too pretty, but might as well not just have a big, ugly battery hanging out in the back. If I was going to do that, I guess I could put it right in the middle right there. But then I also have to run cable and have a lot of drop all the way to the front. I don't think that really matters too much, but it might. Anyway, I'll be thinking about that. More than likely, I'll end up putting it right here, somehow right in front of this cross member, and have it live underneath the floor pan on the passenger side. And I'll probably just put a little hatch in that floor pan where my battery can live there, because I'll have obviously my brake booster and everything on that side over there. We got a long way to go. So enough talking. I'm going to, like I said, put you on time lapse, pull these shocks off, put my laser up, mark where I need to weld it, make sure it's clean, doop, 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 weld her up, square it, all that kind of stuff, and I'll catch you on the other end. I just have to, I got to show you guys this. So I thought it was going to work out perfect. And come on down here, check this out real quick. So I put my laser square right here. And as you can see, I got it squared up on the bolt. Okay. And then I got it where it's squared up. Yeah, perfectly on the inside of this bracket right here. And you can see it's hitting, and I must have bumped it. It's hitting that bracket on that side. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay. So as we know, this inside bracket and that bracket are in line. So if I square this up on this bracket close here, and I have it squared there on the bolt, you can see right here. No, well, you can't see from there now, can you? Sorry for the weird cameraing here. But squared on the bolt, if you look at this angle, you can see that right here, it's hitting exactly on that inside washer. So it's hitting that inside washer, which goes straight up this bracket, which confirms my suspicion that I can take and I can just clean up these tack welds. And I think even with this being flush with the bottom here, okay, like that, I think it's going to live perfect right there. I just need it all the way tucked in. And that's going to work out just right, where that'll be the inside and line up perfectly with that shock. Worst case, and you can see what I ended up doing, you probably saw, I walked over there and grabbed them. These spacers are actually exactly the width of the shock, obviously. That's what they're intended for. So I just grabbed an extra one to make this nice and square and sturdy so that I get an accurate reading. But if I do this properly, it should line up. And if I had to, I could grind a little bit of this spacer off to bring the shock in just, I mean, a skosh. I want to leave enough room between the shock and the rear end, obviously, to make it live comfortably, kind of like it is. It's actually a little bit extra right now at the moment anyway, but I don't hate it. If I ever ended up putting bigger coilovers on, I don't know why I would, but and then I'm not limiting myself. I don't want to have to move my upper mounts ever, but if I had to, I could. I think it looks fine the way it is, and if the rear end moves somehow for some reason back and forth, which it never should for any reason, then I at least have, more than just an eighth of an inch or something. I have about half an inch there, 3/4 maybe. Okay, so I'm going to put you back on the time lapse here. And that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up, weld it on, and then I'll go do the other side too. All right, we got her welded up, and you got to watch me figure out the very obvious way to put these shocks on was to lift the frame up and mount them and then let it set. And as already discussed, I have 270 pound rated springs on this, and I need about 140. So you also saw I raised the other side of the panhard bar up one pull, which is what I really like about this system is I can set it where I need to make it as horizontal to the ground as I possibly can, as perfectly level to the ground, horizontal. So I'm pretty happy. In hindsight, I would have given myself a little more room right here. When I welded these together, I welded them exactly the width I needed. I don't know, I think I probably should have given myself a little bit of breathing room right there. And I'm not certain how good my my bolt with the spacer's gonna hold up. Seems like it's got a lot of leverage, but again, I have way too much spring right now, so I have them back basically all the way off, making them as soft as possible. I think that's the right answer. But let me walk you around here. Let me pull you down real quick, if I can, without making it too crazy. And here you go. There is the rear end. That's how she's gonna look from the back. So, I mean, it all worked out. Remember how I was worried about this shock mount right here? Look at this. Look right in there. You can see, I mean, it is exactly where everything needed to be. I mean, it all tied out perfect. So I'm pretty stoked. I'm pretty happy with how this has gone so far. Like I said, now I'll pull it away, or I'll pull it apart, put the shocks away, weld everything on the rear end, probably paint it. I'm really in the middle of this quandary as to whether I should just leave it all natural and let it just look like it's going to look, or once I get everything welded all up, paint it black. Probably going to end up painting it black, just like the engine over there that I didn't want to paint, but I realized that's the right answer. I need to put some plates on the end right here, and I need to build some fish plates for the Z, the L, whatever you want to call it. So got a little bit to do. I think I'm just going to admire for a quick second. Maybe I'll go have some dinner, and then if there's after dinner time this evening, I'll pull her apart and clean up that rear end, you know, kind of sand it down, do all my welds. I've already sanded everywhere I need to weld, obviously, but clean it up and I'll probably paint it. I'm going to put a new third member in it anyway, so I'm not going to get too crazy about the third member. I might just wait until I have the third member, and then when I pull it out, I'll paint everything and stick it in, make it all nice and clean at that point. TBD. Anyway, thanks for watching along, and as a reminder, the whole point of this project is to honor and to honor all those hot rodders out there, street rod, rat rodders, that started a project and never finished it. That's why I'm doing this. I want to finish one, hopefully lots and lots, from ground up. So this one came to me from a guy who passed and had given it to another guy, and it had been sitting there, and it wasn't gonna get done. Maybe it would have. No disrespect for that guy, to that guy. I don't know him, but I'm gonna do this and have it going down the road this summer, just because there's so many that just sit and get passed on to the next guy and get forgotten. So, all right, do that follow along thing if you want and all that. You'll see how this sucker finishes. See ya.